Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's session of Family Story Times on Race and Diversity. I'm Sira Williams. I'm the Children's Librarian at the Red Bank Public Library. I'm sitting by the Navesink River here in Red Bank, New Jersey. It is a gorgeous day. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really happy that you're here, and I'm always pleased to hear how well received this program is, because it makes me know that you're listening and you're talking at home about issues of race and diversity and inclusion and social justice, and that's what this whole shebang is all about. So that is fantastic. We're celebrating Thanksgiving this month. So the first thing I want to do is have you say out loud at home 3 things that you're thankful for. Go. Did you do it? Okay, it's my turn then. My thankful things are my family, my friends, my home, my health, my job. I think I did 5 things. So, of course, there's so many things to be thankful for. And I just wanted to do that to get us in the right frame of mind for this program. Now I have another question for you. I want to know what you think of. First thing that pops into your head when I say the word Thanksgiving. Did you say food? Did you say food? I think most people said food, because let's face it, on Thanksgiving we eat a lot of delicious food. And so that's the subject that we're going to stick to today, because food is one of those things that ties us all together as people, right? We're all human beings. We all have to eat, no matter who we are, where we come from, what language we speak, what our race or ethnicity is. We all eat food. But this is the thing. All of those things influence the kinds of foods that we eat, right? There's so many different kinds of foods in this world, and it is influenced by who we are and where we come from and what our race or ethnicity or our culture is. And so you can learn about different kinds of foods, and you can be adventurous and try different kinds of foods. But this is what I want you to remember. Never make fun of or put down anybody for the kinds of foods that they eat. Okay, because when you do that, you are insulting who they are and where they come from. And that's not nice, and it's not necessary. Because just because somebody's eating something that you've never had at home, or something that you've never heard of, doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just new to you. So like I said, try it. You might discover something that you love. And you can learn and read about different cultures and food with books from the library or the bookstore. Let me find a couple more here. Oops, they're all upside down. But this kind of gets us to the book that we're going to read today, because we are going to read about food and a culture that are very tied to our Thanksgiving celebration. And I'm talking about Native Americans. Did anybody think about them when I asked you what Thanksgiving reminded you of? This month is National Native American Heritage Month. And when we learn about history at school, like when you learn about the first Thanksgiving, remember that when you learn about history, a lot of times you're only learning one side of a story, the side that's in the history books. And so when you learn that the first Thanksgiving was a wonderful week-long celebration between the Pilgrims and the Native Americans, that's only a little piece of the story. There's much more to that story, and there's much, much more for you to learn about Native Americans. Because Native Americans are our indigenous peoples. That means their ancestors were here. They're the original inhabitants of this land. They lived here by this river, and they lived in your community. And they were here way, way, way before Christopher Columbus, before the Pilgrims, before the settlers. And they've been here throughout the whole entire history of the United States of America. And they weren't just sitting on the sidelines and watching. They were part and integral to our history, and we should learn about them, because they have had many struggles and hardships and there have been a lot of government policies that have treated them so unfairly and stripped them of this land and broke apart their communities and their families. And if we learn about that, then we can understand what they have been through as a culture, and we can also recognize all of the wonderful contributions that they've made to our society and to our American culture. And we have to realize that Native Americans are still here. They're in every community around us, and they are striving to keep their culture and their traditions alive. And so I'm going to give you a challenge while you're home and you're not in school over this Thanksgiving break, for you to look up online or read a book, find a story, or watch a video, not a Disney movie, but something that will teach you some facts about Native American history. Okay? You try to do that. I'm going to find the book that we're going to read today. It's called Fry Bread, A Native American Family Story. It's by Kevin Noble Maillard, and it's illustrated by Juana Martinez Neal. And you see that gold sticker? That means it's an award-winning book. These illustrations are beautiful. I want you to examine them as I read the book, and you'll see all the different shapes and sizes and colors of Native American people in this book. All right. It says, fry bread is food. Flour, salt, water, cornmeal, baking powder, perhaps milk, maybe sugar, all mixed together in a big bowl. It's getting windy out here. Fry bread is shape. Hands mold the dough, flat like a pancake, round like a ball, or puffy like Nana's softest pillow. Fry bread is sound. The skillet clangs on the stove. The fire blazes from below. Drop the dough in the skillet and the bubbles sizzle and pop. Fry bread is color. Golden brown, tan, or yellow. Deep like coffee, sienna, or earth. Light like snow and cream. Warm like rays of sun. Fry bread is flavor. See beans or soup. Smell tacos, cheese, and vegetables. Delight in honey and jam. Rise to discover what brings us together. Fry bread is time. On weekdays and holidays, supper or dinner, powwows and festivals, moments together with family and friends. Fry bread is art, sculpture, landscape, portrait, our daily craft, shared from teacher to student, a cycle of heritage and fortune. Fry bread is history, the long walk, the stolen land, strangers in our own world. With unknown food, we made new recipes from what we had. Fry bread is place. Alaska, Kansas, all the way to Maine, down to Delaware, on to Georgia, over to Oklahoma, Colorado, and California. Cities and lands we call home. Fry bread is nation. Abenaki, Apache, Arapaho, Ojibwe, Onondaga, Oglala Sioux, Narragansett, Navajo, Nipmuc, Seminole, Shoshone, Sac and Fox, hundreds and hundreds of tribes. This page, they're all written here. Fry bread is everything. Round, flat, large, small, north, south, east, west, brown, yellow, black, white, familiar and foreign, old and new. We come together. Fry bread is us. We're still here, elder and young, friend and neighbor. We strengthen each other to learn, change, and survive. Fry bread is you. And then in the back of the book, the author has included his family's recipe for fry bread, which we'll have to try. And then there are a lot of author's notes about the different elements that he's written about in this book. This is kind of the big kid section of this book. There's a lot of information in here, and I really encourage you to check this book out, or even buy it for your own collection, because you can really learn a lot by reading these authors' notes. And he wrote this book because he wanted his children to see themselves in a storybook. We've talked about mirror books and window books and how it's so important for children to be able to see themselves in the books that they read. Not just children, hey, everybody, because it gives you power. It instills in you a sense of pride. It helps you see possibilities for yourself. And so that's what he did. I took the cover off this book. But besides reading about different cultures, we can actually talk to people and hear their stories. So that's what we're gonna do. I spoke to a wonderful woman who is an expert in local Indian Native American cultures. Her name is Claire Garland. I have to read this part. She is the director of the Sandhill Historical Association, a member of the New Jersey Commission of Indian Affairs, and a co-chair of the Committee on Native American Life and Culture for the New Jersey Historical Commission. And I want you to listen to this conversation that I had with her. You're gonna learn a lot. So here I am with my friend, Miss Claire Garland. She is going to talk to us about the Native Americans who were indigenous to this area where we live in New Jersey, and about some of their traditions around food and the harvest. And thank you for joining me. Claire, how are you today?
Glad to be here. Very well, thank you.
Great. First of all, I want to know, since we just read the book, have you ever had fry bread before?
I've had something similar called cornbread, which I think is pretty close to it, and it's very good.
Delicious. It sounds delicious in the book. All right, can you tell us about the Native American tribes that were indigenous to this area where we live in New Jersey?
Yes, most of the groups here were related to the Lenape clans that covered most of the Northeast. And within that clan, there were many different groups, but Lenape was the main group. And there's still Lenape people here today. Some are called Ramapo, some are called Sandhill, some are called Nanticoke or Powhatan, the groups that are recognized by the state of New Jersey, but they all go back to the Lenape heritage.
I think I've seen and heard of places in and around this area that are named after some of those.
Oh yes, like Manasquan and Matawan and Portapeck and Wickatunk and Titaconk, and so many of our local area places, Wanamassa, go back to the original deeds that were written, Navesink, from the people who lived here. And so the names are still here because the deeds had the names of the people that traded the land or sold the land to the settlers that started arriving in the 15 and 1600s.
Yes, New Jersey is one of the original 13 colonies, right?
Well, even before that, it was New Netherland and New Belgium. Before it was even English, it was Dutch.
There's so much history here for us to learn and research.
But
Can you tell us? Yeah, go ahead.
The English like to forget the Dutch and pretend that New Jersey formally started in 1664, but actually there's a long history of people here in this area in the early 1600s, and they were the Dutch people.
Interesting. But the Lenape were here before them, right?
Oh, thousands of years, yes.
There we go. So I heard you mention Navesink, and that's the river that runs through Red Bank. That's the town that we're in.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the food that they grew and they fished for or hunted in this area?
Yes, well, basically fishing and shellfish and crabs and fish from the sea. Also small mammals, venison, rabbit, lots of corn and vegetables. And it makes me think of the corn crib that stood on my grandparents' property at Richardson Heights. There was a big corn crib the size of a barn, and all through the season, corn would be put in there to be shared by the whole community of brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles and parents and grandparents, and they shared the corn. And corn was such an important factor in the diet because so many things are made from corn. Over 4,000 products come from corn, just corn itself.
Wow.
And of course, squash and beans and vegetables and plants that were not known in Europe, but were very plentiful here. Now, corn feeds Europe and Africa. So much corn is shipped overseas to feed the animals that corn made the survival possible of European people. And it's interesting, when they came, they said, wow, look at these people. They have no rotted teeth. They have good skin. Of course, they had no sugar and no salt in their diet. Everything was natural. But their diet was healthy and good, where the European diet was very bad. And that's why they had so many plagues. That's why they had rotten teeth, bad skin, and poor health. All goes back to diet.
Wow. I know we still grow a lot of corn here too, but it sounds like the Europeans learned a lot from the Native Americans.
Corn is needed for cooking oils and crayons, baby powder, ethanol, glue, building materials, cornbread, corn soup, corn crib, popcorn.
Now you're talking the things that I like about corn.
Just to name a few. Corn has become a worldwide staple, and that came from the Native American people.
That's awesome. Well, as we're talking about those crops, I wanted to know if the Native Americans have traditional celebrations around the harvest time, similar to our Thanksgiving.
There was a green corn ceremony that included songs and dances, works of arts, celebrating the new crop, celebrating the harvest from the garden. The community would come together in the fall. We usually would come together in the summer. Labor Day was also a traditional family gathering day. But this is when they would try to bind the community together, passing down traditions and knowledge of the three sisters, corn, squash, and beans. Beans would climb the tall corn stalks, and beans also would add nitrogen to the soil. Corn leaves would protect the beans from the sun, keep them from burning up. And then squash would be planted in between the rows to hold the moisture and to keep out the weeds. So all three grew together. And sometimes we call it succotash, and that's what the Indian word is for the mixture of vegetables in like a stew.
I like that imagery of the three sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I also wanted to ask you about Thanksgiving, and how you talk about that holiday in light of the history with your young grandchildren.
Thanksgiving is actually a myth, and Americans have joined the myth. Americans think that Thanksgiving started in Plymouth for the first time, and people in Jamesburg, Virginia think Thanksgiving started in Jamestown in the Virginia colony for the first time. So actually, Thanksgiving is a universal tradition among Native Americans that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years because they were thankful during their daily life. And we gather at Thanksgiving with family with the traditional foods, and try to pass on the story of Thanksgiving and make our descendants realize that Thanksgiving has been a part of life for thousands of years, all the way back to the Bible. I think Abraham Lincoln was the one who signed into law that Thanksgiving would be on a certain Thursday in November. But the history of being thankful goes back to biblical times and thanking the Creator for all the blessings that we have, for life itself.
Yes, we can definitely take that lesson and try to be thankful every day for all the wonderful blessings that we have. So I'm
One
really
more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing, if I can add, there was a fall gathering held in Lenape big houses. In the different villages and communities, there was always something like a round or a long house called the big house. We have our community centers, we have our libraries for community gatherings, we have our churches and fellowship halls. So people are social. They need to be around other people to socialize. This was another opportunity to have music and drumming, flutes playing, singing and praying. They would set two large fires and try to keep those fires burning for days, for a week. And it made me think of my grandparents. In the fall, a hog would be killed. All the men would get together and kill a hog, of something we don't think of nowadays to do. But in those days, 75, 100 years ago, people lived in their communities, and you just didn't have the big stores to go to and buy what you needed. They produced what they needed. They were self-sufficient. They had a smokehouse, and the meat would be stored in the smokehouse, and then people would have meat throughout the winter. My grandmother also had chicken. She had chicken coops, and they got eggs every day. So they had the corn crib, they had the barn for their cattle, they had the smokehouse, they had their chicken coops, they had grape arbors for their wine making. She had a butter churn on the back porch, and they had big barrels of flour and other things they needed to do their baking and all. They were self-sufficient, and that's a life we've moved away from, but it traditionally was how they survived.
It also sounds very communal, everybody working together and taking care of each other.
Right, community.
Community is so important. Wow, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you were able to meet with me today. Thank you for all the good work that you continue to do on behalf of that community. And I just wish you and your family a happy 2020 Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Same to you.
Isn't it so cool to learn about different people and different cultures? I love that, and I'm so happy that Miss Garland was able to talk to us today, because did you ever notice that as you learn new things, like you change, or the way you see the world changes when you get things that you didn't get before? Like, we just were talking about this river, the Navesink River, and now when I look at it, I can know that they were Native Americans who were living along this river. They were fishing here and clamming here and digging for oysters here, and that is so cool. It changes my whole perspective about what's here around me. And so that's why grown-ups say that education is so important, because the more you know, the more you grow. It's just a fact. So stay curious and keep learning, young people. All right? And be thankful. Be thankful for your education as we're thinking of things to be thankful for. Be thankful for your teachers and your family that help you to learn and grow each day. And be thankful for your big brains and all that you know, because everything that you know is up here and nobody can take it away from you. And I want you to use that big brain over this break to learn about Indigenous people, okay? That's your challenge. And I'm gonna see you next month. We're gonna learn about the wonderful cultural celebration of Kwanzaa, since it'll be holiday season. And until then, I just want you to stay well, take good care, and I'm gonna leave you with some peace and love, like I always do. Bye, everybody.